All right, Shalom. First, I can start by saying all praise to Yahweh, by Hashem El Shai, by Hashem El Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles that rule well, and salutations to the brothers that's doing the truth and sincerity. Now, this lesson is based on it's like how the Lord put curses on us, which we represent the 12 tribes of Israel, for not keeping his laws, statutes, and commandments. So I'm going to start with this Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. It says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." Right, so since we didn't keep the laws, statutes, and commandments that was laid out for us, during the time of Moses, in which Israel was supposed to teach their generations to keep it, so we can have it for today. The Lord eventually end up putting us in slavery, man. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64. All right, so it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." Right, so the Lord scattered us across the whole world. They call it the transatlantic slave trade. They also call it I had it. Yep. The Atlantic slave trade. I'm gonna read into it just a little bit. This is the Atlantic slave trade. It says the Atlantic slave trade, or transatlantic slave trade, involved the transportation by slave traders of enslaved African people, mainly from Africa to the Americas, and then they're sailed there. It says the slave trade used mainly the triangular trade route, which I'm going to bring up. This is the triangular trade route, as you can see. It says triangular trade or triangle trade is a historical term indicating trade among three ports or regions. Triangular trade usually evolves when a region has export commodities that are not required in the region from which its major imports come. It says triangular trade thus provide a method for rectifying trade imbalances between the above regions. All right. Okay, it says the slave trade used mainly the triangular trade route and its middle passage. Look up the middle passage, same thing. The Middle Passage was the stage of the triangular trade in which millions of Africans were shipped to the New World as part of the Atlantic slave trade. It says, Ship's Passage was the stage of the triangular trade in which millions of Africans were shipped to the New World as part of the Atlantic slave trade. Ships departed Europe from African markets with manufactured goods, which were traded for purchased or kidnapped Africans who were transported across the Atlantic as slaves. The slaves were then sold or traded for raw materials, which would be transported back to Europe to complete the voyage. Voyages on the Middle Passage were large financial undertaking generally organized by companies or groups of investors rather than individuals. Right. So Judah, Benjamin, Levi was part of this. Who was Ephraim was part of this. You know, some of the tribes that small bits of them stayed with Judah, Benjamin, Levi in the land of Israel. So all Israel. All Israel was involved in this slave trade down there. But it says the slave trade usually used mainly the triangular trade route in this middle passage and existed from the 16th to the 19th centuries. It says the vast majority of those who were enslaved and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were Africans from Central and Western Africa, right? Which was mainly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Ephraim was shipped from Hispaniola in 1492 over there to Europe. It's a lot of history on that, so y'all have to do all the extra research yourself unless the Spirit have it to where I go back in detail with it. But it says that the vast majority of those who were enslaved and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were Africans from Central and Western Africa who had been sold by other West Africans to Western European slave traders, with a small number being captured directly by the slave traders and coastal raids who brought them to the Americas. Now, there were no Africans selling no Africans into slavery. There were Africans, which represents Ham, according to the scriptures, selling Israelites into slavery. There was Ham and Ishmael, which Ishmael represents the so-called Arabs now today. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 6. It says, what you see happening now today, us being on the highways and byways, waking up the 12 tribes of Israel, bringing out the truth on who we really are according to the scriptures. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel. That's why you see all these wars being started over there in the Middle East. That's why you see all these nations gathering over there in the Middle East. And Jehoshaphat is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. It says, imparted my land. Right, and we was originally from Israel, and our land had got parted between them Ishmaelites and them Edomites. It says, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. So when we were scattered, according to prophecy, we were sold on auction blocks. It says, giving a boy for an harlot, meaning they was popping the young men and turning young men into homosexuals, man. They was having sex with them young boys, man. And sold a girl for wine that they may drink. And they were selling our young women for wine. It says, yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, which represents the Africans, and all the coast of Palestine, which represents the Ishmaelites? Will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Right, so since they had us in slavery and they sold us into slavery, we're going to put them in slavery. And, just for the record, also, where it says, have given a boy for an harlot, I think the group now today is called if I'm not mistaken, Nambla. And what it represents is older men get to have sex with younger men. I mean, young little boys. You know, so you best believe that Jake and them involved in that. It says, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. Right, so they took our resources, our silver and gold. It says the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians. Right, the Grecians represents these white people. So we in slavery up under these white people now today, that ye might remove them far from their border. But I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. Right, so since they sold us into slavery, we're going to get to sell them into slavery. But the moral of the story was we were sold unto these white people, and we up in their hands now today. So, but this is back to the transatlantic slave trade. It says, I'm going to just read just a little bit more. It says the South Atlantic and Caribbean economies especially were dependent on the supply of secured labor for the production of commodity crops, making goods and clothing to sell in Europe. This was crucial to those Western European countries which in the late 17th and 18th centuries were vying with each other to create overseas. 64, it says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Right, so we were scattered across this whole world to be to be put in slavery, and we end up serving other gods. The wood represents Christianity, and the stone represents Islam. Those were curses that were put upon us. This is Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 'Salakia. Nope, not Jeremiah. Ezekiel. This is Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 24. It says that thou hast also built. Let me see. This is just a quick precept. It says that thou hast also built unto thee an eminent place, and has made thee an high place in every street. And that's talking about the churches. All right, this is Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 4. I'm going to end it off with this. it says, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. Right? So the Lord made us discontinue from our heritage, and that was from knowing who we are, according to the Bible. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in a land which thou knowest not. Right? So we was brought over here to America, shipped all around the world, and lands that we knew not, because our land was Israel. For ye have kindled a fire, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in a land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. Right? So, the Lord spread us all over the world because we sinned against him. But now we in a time, which were the curses, but now we're in a time of being raised up and brought back to our land. So with that, I'm going to say all praise to Yahweh Shema Shai, double honor to the elders and apostles that rule well, and salutations to the brothers.